This week on Command Control Power, we are featuring a patron-only show for our supporters. If you're already subscribed on Patreon, you will find this week's show in your private podcast feed. To sign up and get instant access to special features like this one and several other recent patron-only episodes, go to commandcontrolpower.com and click on Support. For our general audience, we're featuring a classic episode from our catalog of nearly 500 episodes. We hope you enjoy it.
This show was originally broadcast on February the 9th, 2014.
Yeah, Sam, aside from sending your guys over, when clients are slow to pay, what do you do? How do you deal with that?
Well, yeah, it is a tough call, but, as we were talking about a little bit earlier with the, bulk kind of contract rate payment terms, it makes it a little bit less of an issue, but still it does come up when those contract hours expire. It's time to pay up. And I'm sure you guys have had this too, but I've had people that say, well, can I split it up into 3 payments? Can I do this? Can I that? And that kind of defeats that whole purpose of the prepaid discount, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So, and I've rolled over a couple times for people, and it kind of ticks me off when I do. I'm kind of mad at myself for just going, well, what's the point of this?
Right.
If they know that they can just do this to me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how do you have people that break it up into pay or want to break it up like that? And
sometimes, not so much the contract clients. They just wait until it's half spent and then pay. In some cases, we'll do a contract. We'll do a discounted rate for a contract of 20 hours, let's say, and and we'll send them the invoice when they have an hour or two left on the previous contract, or when we're starting a new contract. And we'll see them a couple times, and finally we'll get paid. And maybe we've already spent 5 or 10 hours there by the time we get a check. So it's a prepayment, but it's only prepayment for half the time. And it's almost worse because we've done all this work and we haven't gotten paid for any of it until halfway through.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I have a couple clients that are just notorious about it. It's just here we go again, every contract renewal.
Yeah, so I've taken to sending them earlier sometimes, when it's a renewal, okay, we're down to 5 hours on the previous block of 20 hours. So here's your contract. We've moved those 5 hours to the new one. You owe us for the 20 more hours. So you've got 25 in the bank, and this is the bill. And and then they kind of they're still into those next block of 20 hours before they pay. So and if you go too soon on it, it's well, I thought this was prepaid. I still got this much time left. How do I just feel like it's awkward to send them a bill before the hours are used up,
Yeah. Do you send them reports or any PDF of time used after you're there or anything like that?
Yeah, we basically just keep updating the invoice. In our case, we use QuickBooks still, yuck. But we copy and paste our client notes into the invoice notes for the description of work that's been done, just similarly to the way we would bill a client for on a postpaid kind of thing. We just update the existing invoice with no balance due, and we just send statements basically showing the hours left on that invoice.
Mm-hmm. I'm dealing with a manufacturing client right now, and 30 days leading into expiration, I sent out the invoice for basically 6 months of server maintenance, where I do remote maintenance. I drop in for 1 hour a month, and he hasn't paid it. And normally, what I will do with clients in that case is I'll resend the invoice, and in the subject line, I'll put resend in bold caps. And usually that's enough to sort of prime the pump. And this is a fairly big company, and he literally is in control of the money flow. And he's been replying to me saying, I keep forgetting about it. So January has come and gone, and I haven't dropped in on his server, and I haven't done the overview or the wellness visit remotely. So it can be problematic. And what I do in terms of these, keeping track of these, and that's the other thing that you brought up off mic, Joe, was that not only are we offering discounted services with this and giving that benefit to the client, we also have the added record keeping that we need to maintain to make sure that they've used all the hours before we bill them again. And the way I actually keep track of that is I use a product from Market Circle. So I'm a partner for Daylight. So they give me their billing product, which is called Billings. They have two. They have Billings and Billings Pro. And so what I do is the money comes in and I show it as a retainer. And then what I do is when I perform hours against that retainer, I put it through as an invoice and then deducted from the balance of the retainer and it gets stamped as paid, but I actually have a physical record of all these paid invoices that were generated against the retainer. So if they ever say, do you have a record of the time, not just beyond notes, I've actually got physical invoices. Now, most times I do mail them those paid invoices to show that, this was time performed against the retainer, and that's sort of a good way. So we sort of we're both keeping track of it in a way.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've always wished that QuickBooks had a feature like that, and maybe it does by now because I'm still on the couple-year-old version of QuickBooks for Mac, and maybe on Windows it's always done it. I don't know, but like having just putting time in the bank, putting money in the bank, and then just invoicing against it, would be a nice feature to have in QuickBooks.
Yeah, Billings Pro does a lot of nice things. It generates beautiful invoices. There's some downside to using it, as I mentioned to you on a previous show. I still keep track of all my business accounting through QuickBooks, so I generate the invoice twice. Just sort of a dummy invoice, so it's processed through QuickBooks, so I can keep track of them that way. But what inevitably goes to the customer is this nicely generated invoice from Billings Pro. So I'm kind of keeping, I don't want to say
two sets of books.
You're doing double work.
Yes.
And just to circle back to like the situation you're in now with this client, that's slow to pay and forgot about it or whatever. I've definitely dealt with that kind of thing before, many, many times. But there's sort of no good solution because if you're supposed to be doing their wellness visit and you don't because you're not getting paid for it, and then something goes wrong, you can't say, well, I didn't do your wellness visit because you're not paying me, so it's your fault. Of course you could, and you would, and obviously that's probably the way I would handle the situation too. But it's still not a good position for you to be in, just to have that on your shoulders if that comes to pass.
Yeah. It is. Any kind of a bill is sort of an implied renewal of a contract. So if they're not honoring that within the time period that you generated the invoice, it's basically saying that they're not continuing with you in good faith. So
right. So you're not continuing doing the work in good faith.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're just sort of at a standstill. And again, this communication. And again, I don't think that they're looking around for alternate sources of support. I just think that it's just not a high priority for him. And I've sent him enough of communications, and he sort of jokes about it and just says, he doesn't say he's sorry, just says, haha, I keep forgetting about it.
Well, Jerry, some people would say, that's because you're still doing the selling my time thing, that old racket, and some people would say, that's because you're in the break fix mindset, because I've heard that come up a lot recently, and we're working on a show, obviously, around managed services, kind of a roundtable to bring all the major players together, maybe to discuss some of this stuff, because I think it's an interesting model that solves that issue to some extent, and that's maybe one of the main benefits is like just auto pay on credit cards, and then if they want in, they're set up for that. If they don't want into your level of support, they're that's it, they're off the roster. But I say that a little bit in jest as well because it's not really a solution.
No, it's a point well taken. But probably if I had attempted to set him up with something like that, he probably wouldn't have ended up being a client at that point.
Right, and that's always the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work for every client. Yeah, I mean, we're as I mentioned, we're looking at this just one in particular client that it's perfect situation for me to offer managed services to them. They've spent a similar amount of money anyway, and it's mostly break fix, and we can kind of propose this as we'll be more proactive and everything. But that's, not all my clients fall into that groove. So I even envision if I went to some sort of managed services, I'd still have a decent amount of those break fix people still hanging around. I mean,
that's a good point.
There are some people that have successfully just progressed all the way to managed services, and then those people that didn't want to come, they just said, "See you later." But I can't envision myself doing that.
I find that a lot of people who are new to the party and may have been switchers at some point, back 6 or 7 years ago, they're a lot more open and willing to talk about a managed service contract. Whereas this particular client, now that I'm thinking of it, he goes back to OS 7 and OS 8 days. So he's been a Mac user, from the very beginning, and we sort of are fighting that that mindset of older Mac users who that's why they bought a Mac. It's because they've always managed their networks or their large installations, and they've really never had to have a tech guy come in on a month-to-month basis because they have Macs.
Just works.
Yeah,
it just works.
Right.
I had a Windows guy in my class today. I was teaching at the Mountain Lion 301, and he was a really nice guy, but we had an issue with Open Directory where something wasn't working. He's like, I thought Macs just work. What's going on? And I'm like, all right. It always happens. I get a Windows guy in my class, and he just always says that.
Did you throw him out?
No, I didn't. I just kicked the plug out of his machine.
Now try taking the test.
Sucker.
That's funny. So I've been looking into alternatives for auto pay, recurring payments. Like, so you can get set up with a company called Chargeify, for example, and they get you set up for $65 a month for up to 20 customers, and then you can get each additional customer for like $1.99 a month. And my understanding is they don't have any per sort of transaction fee and all that stuff. They set you up with the ability to put in a customer, select a sort of payment model and monthly rate and all that stuff, and just charge the card on a monthly basis. They do require that you have your own payment processor that you bring in. So somebody like Stripe or Merchant Warehouse or whatever, probably Authorize.net, that kind of thing, who, of course, you're also paying credit card fees to, whoever your processor is. But it's, so for the cost of $65 a month, you could get, you could have 20 customers whose credit cards are being charged automatically every month. And I've been looking at this as an alternative to the, going all in on managed services, but just charging people for, Jerry, what you call wellness visits. Sam, you have a name for something similar, right? Or is it the same name?
That was my name.
That was your name. Now Jerry's using it. And
Sam's got the market cornered of the word wellness. I'm sorry.
Right.
I do.
At least it's not paper. That one's going around lately.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I've been using quick fixes, and I think so. I've heard of a couple other consultants using that as well. And then we have something called seasonal checkups. I think I mentioned this last week, and so it's just a way to basically cover most of the smaller issues and regular checkups for just a monthly fee. So they know that they're paying something per month, and they can call us anytime with these little quick questions, and count on us to connect with them, 4 times a year for just a general checkup, checking backups and updates and things like that. And everything else is billable at the normal rate. I mean, it's, so there's a plan for individuals, for home users, for offices. And I'm just beginning to roll this out and, offer it to clients. But I think it's a way to get some of these people to sign on so that we can all just count on the money coming in every month and not have to worry about, shuffling a lot of paper around.
I hear you. I was typing to the chat room, so I couldn't do two things at once.
FreshBooks offers these payment gateways as well, so you would have to sign on with their service and then do all your billing through FreshBooks, and you could use things like Authorize.net and Stripe. So I believe their fees are pretty modest for auto billing. So that's an also maybe if you wanted to sort of do a little bit more, you could look into the whole enchilada with FreshBooks and generate your invoices through them too.
Yeah, and we've talked, I think, a little bit also about what a lot of people do, I suspect, which is to keep the card on file, even though we're not supposed to do that. And of course, I don't know, I've dealt with clients who almost insist we do that, and we don't. We haven't done that for any clients up to this point. And we're not supposed to officially, but it's always a little funny telling your clients, like, we're not allowed to keep your card on file. It's not secure, and they're thinking, well, don't you guys, aren't you in charge of my security? What do you mean it's not secure? You can't keep my credit card secure? And it's more like, it's this subtle argument about like, well, we're in, the payment industry and blah, blah, blah. And, but I suspect a lot of people just do that. And clients would probably be perfectly happy to have us keep their card on file and run their card on a monthly basis. So it, seems a little crazy to have to set up these systems or switch your entire accounting system over to be able to do that, just to charge somebody's card on a regular basis.
And then, of course, eats into your hourly rate. And
Yeah.
yeah.
The fees, it's just one more fee that we have to pay. Yeah, cuts into that.
A lot of people talking about Stripe.com on the chat.
Yeah, and Stripe is apparently really easy to integrate with a lot of different things. You can integrate it with Squarespace, for example, for taking payments through their shopping cart system. It also integrates with something called a Woofu for forms. I think who mentioned that? Was it Ryan? Yeah,
Ryan
mentioned Woofu. Yeah, and they're great. Woofu looks like a really slick site, and it integrates with Stripe, which is really convenient. But they don't do recurring payments. So there's this really long thread on the Woofu site announcing the Stripe integration, which, I don't know, 100 people have sounded off about, why don't you do recurring payments? That would make my life easier. Because I think it would be a lot cheaper to do that. You'd just be paying the Stripe fees, basically. But
I think we all need to look into it further, but who has the time? That's the other question.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. Spend all day doing stuff like this, trying to figure out how to optimize your business. So Alan says not Chargify. What's the recommendation against Chargify? Does anybody have any stories about that?
Yeah, that was all in caps. He's not happy.
Yikes. So I should just mention that to the listeners that maybe Chargify is not the best option. I did, like I said, I'm just sort of researching it. I'm glad I mentioned it though. So maybe I saved myself some trouble.
So we have I'm sorry, Sam. Did you have
I was going to say that's why we do this, to crowdsource and get information.
So we have a little bit of follow up. We had someone, Alex Narvi, who's a listener. Thanks for listening, Alex, who just wanted to reach out and clarify what we said, and we probably weren't a little bit clear on that. And that's last week when we were mentioning about VPN only allowing one connection on L2TP. And of course, we were referring to from the same location or from the same IP address. If you're VPNing out to a server using L2TP, you can't have two simultaneous connections from the same IP address. Right. But of course, if two people were in two separate locations, it's I don't know if it's unlimited, but certainly, it's not limited to one person. And the other little bit of follow-up we had was with the Carrio mail server that I told you that, it was my story about having to keep on rebinding anytime I wanted to make modifications to the Open Directory and Workgroup Manager. And the situation there was the Open Directory got corrupted. And so that was the only way I could sort of hobble along and still keep the mail server up with its 200 users and still keep breathing life into it. And actually, 2 days after the show, I finally, the thing collapsed and I reinstalled I did the destroyed Open Directory and rebuilt it and used Passenger from Mac in Mind 2 times last week. They're not a sponsor, but it's a great piece of software. If you go to macinmind.com, the website is a little 1980s, so don't get put off by that. But they make this great product called Passenger, which allows you to basically bring in an Open Directory export, add new passwords to it, and you could save it off as a file that you can import into a brand new Open Directory. So if you're looking for ways to basically work with a whole bunch of users and you don't want to do any sort of manual typing in at the keyboard in Workgroup Manager, it's just a fantastic little utility, and it's paid for itself several times over. So do you have any more to add to that, Sam? Because I know you've used it.
Well, yeah, I used it actually I actually researched and then ended up contacting you when I was having an issue, I think. If you recall, a while ago I was on, I think it was an APS gig in San Francisco, and I was jammed up. And I was like, Jerry, help, Passenger. But it ended up, helping me out with that transition of passwords and everything. But it's definitely a cool little app. And yeah, you're right about the website. But it's definitely a worthwhile application for sure. And
Jay Lichtenauer, who's the developer, I mean, he's
quick to respond, right?
Very quick to respond. Yeah, he's just he'll go the extra mile for you, and he'll just take stuff out, from his help, manual, and he'll kind of lay it out for you. And just very, very kind, and just a really good guy, and it's just a really great product. And just in we discussing in our pre-show about things to chat about. Yesterday, we had a little bit of snow here in the Northeast, so it was one of those in-office days to catch up on a lot of different things. And I had some domains, just real briefly, I had some domains that were expiring. And, I've got several domains having to do with Macs and stuff like that, including my company's domain. And I did a renewal on GoDaddy for 3 years, and I know all the negative press about GoDaddy, but that's something that we should talk about it a little bit more in length, is just domain registrars. But anyway, I ended up spending $1,000 with GoDaddy that went right on the card for something like 17 domains with privacy to go out for 3 years. Wow. So it can get really expensive.
That's some good membership rewards, though.
Yeah,
on your card.
Yeah,
on your card.
True. On the American Express, sure. But and I really hemmed and hawed about it, and it took me a long time to sort of finally bite the bullet and lock down that charge. And that may seem trivial to some of the listeners, but $1,000 is a lot of money to me. So and you just have to do it. Sometimes these things, there's just a cost of doing business, and so, I would just happen to mention it to my wife, who was listening for the other room or hearing me mutter to myself.
She and Nana were listening together?
Exactly. And she was asking me, like, well, why do you have so many variants on your, so many variants on your own domain name for your company? And it's like, there's a very good point to be made here, where you don't want the guy down the street to be able to pick up a domain that's very close to yours and just sort of run with that and sort of do a redirect to his site.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's true.
I mean, Joe or Sam, I don't know if, Joe, I don't know if you've got PSI-Mac, but, certainly we wouldn't want somebody to pick that up and then just point it.
Is that a threat, Jerry?
I just did.
Sam just bought it.
But I know one of our live listeners is getting
and I don't know how much that matters. Yeah. I mean, but I think it matters some. And so my wife said, well, if this is what it costs you to sort of like protect a little bit of the business, then it's definitely worth it,
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also have, of course, a collection of domains that I find, I'm hoping someday someone will offer me some, ridiculous amount of money for because it was a cool idea or whatever. Who knows? Maybe you'll get lucky like that too, Jerry. I mean, they can't all be variants on your company name, can they?
Oh, they are.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I let a lot of my cool domains go. I had one called macropology.com,
Nice.
like a spin on anthropology. And my intent there was I was going to try to do some sort of a Mac blog, but like you said, Joe, who has time? And then I had, I was listening to a show that Marco did last year from, help me out, Joe, their current show. Marco Arment.
Accidental Tech Podcast?
And he was talking about made from matter. Oh, I guess it was John Siracusa. And he was talking about something like made from matter and made from bits. So I quickly went out and I thought that those were really cool names. Yeah. And I let those go. I carried those for a year or so. They're available, folks.
Nice. I was going to ask you guys about that. Like, do you ever get a business idea or a thought in your head? You're like, oh, let me go buy that domain and then I'll figure it out later. So I used to have like a ton. I still do. I've just had a ton of ridiculous, weird domains. Not even all of them are tech related, just crazy business ideas,
Well, I'm in my Namecheap account right now. I'll see if I see any interesting ones. But Sam, you gave me one, I think it was a couple weeks ago, scipass.com.
Oh, nice.
I had thought about that idea and in fact, that same name, but I never bought the domain. I checked it. I'm like, I think I have that. Let me check. And I didn't have it. So sure enough, I decided to buy it. But but
it can get pretty expensive. I mean, I pruned out, a number of domains that I picked up along the way, and even ones that I, really thought long and hard about, and again, to just push out a 3-year renewal on them with privacy was a little over $1,000. So
yeah, I've faced that decision for much lower amounts of money as well. Like, geez, I don't know. I mean, because it's easy enough to buy a domain. It's like $10 or something, and they just like throw everything in, and it's like really cheap. And then it comes time to renew, and it's more expensive for every subsequent year. And then you have to decide about the privacy thing. Well, it's been private for this long. Do I really want somebody contacting me and sending me emails? And so it's that same decision process, which it's a cost of doing business to some extent. Some of it's like fun domains that might one day be worth something. And
I used to sell domains years ago. Like just buy them up, like buy expiring domains and hang on to them. And I used to do selling of some domains here and there. I made a few bucks back in the day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not anymore. I mean, again, who has the time?
I used to have, you could get these interesting top level domains. One of them was .ac, like I think it's like the Ascension Islands, wherever that is. Anyway, and so I bought .mac, .dotm.ac. So it's spelled .mac out, like when Apple came out with .mac. So it was like a way,
really?
And I don't know why I bought it, because it was just kind of pointless. But it was their trademark, basically spelled out as a domain. And I didn't renew that. And but I did buy Psymac, psim.ac. So I have like my own, little, that'd be cool for like a redirect for Twitter, that kind of thing.
That is cool.
psim.ac/whatever.
Yeah, that's very good. I actually have one that I have registered with, not registered, but I do a redirect with Bitly. So it's macsmax.ws. So.
Oh, that's how you do that with Bitly. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Bitly does that for you for free.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm resisting the urge to go into my account and look at all my domain names.
The day of reckoning will come when they need to be renewed. And
yeah, no, I've gotten there. I've gotten there where I have to renew a bunch of domains, and then I'm like, well, maybe I'll just renew this one for a year because I don't think I'll keep it, but for now I'll redo it.
Yeah, I need more time.
And then next year comes on.
Yeah,
I need time.
And you're furiously trying bad discount codes from retailmenot.com.
Exactly.
Oh, man. I think actually, Joe, years ago when we first met, you told me about that site, Retail Me Not.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one. There's also, I think it was a spinoff from Bug Me Not, maybe, or it might be totally unaffiliated, but Bug Me Not was like some site wants you to like put in your email address before allowing you to continue, or you've got to sign up, even though it's free. You got to sign up, for get an email and create a password and all that. So it's just a way to like, give you a password, give you an email and password you could use to log into a website, not to log in, but just to access a website, for example.
So an interesting comment from the chat room here that new ACN applicants get denied if there is name infringement. If you have Apple or Mac in your business name, they won't allow you to.
Yeah, I've heard that's been that way for a few years. I think, if you already, actually for a while, I think it was my understanding that they changed, your name in the listing. If you had a conflicting name, they changed it to your own, like your personal name as opposed to your company name. If your company name conflicted, this happened to me. They changed it to just show, instead of Psymac, they showed my name in the locator.
Wow.
And I emailed them and I said, what's going on? And they wrote back and said, sorry, a bunch of those got changed because, whatever, because of trademark infringement. But, we're going to allow you to continue using this name since you've been grandfathered in, that kind of thing. Mm. So, we exist at Apple's pleasure, I guess, until they change their mind.
Well, that's true. I'm waiting for the day actually that I get shut down with my name, that Apple comes and says, we need it back, right? And there's really nothing that I could do at that point, correct? Right? Mac works if they want Mac work.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I guess, right. It's a possibility. Who knows?
Yeah. So,
you're just waiting.
I'm just waiting.
Maybe you shouldn't renew the domain for 3 years. Just renew it for one.
Well, after this show gets out,
Yeah, exactly.
I'll have bigger problems.
Well, look at what Macworld went through way back in the day. Don't capitalize the W. Don't do that. That's really bad. It was like something like that, right? Because the magazine is Macworld, and then the conference is Macworld Expo or whatever. And the W in world has to be lowercase because it's like one word. It's not Mac World. It's like Mac World. So they kind of like get by on that, I guess.
So funny. Hey, speaking of the ACN community, did you guys see an email that came out that the advisory council, they're choosing new members?
Yeah.
Weren't you considering doing that at one time, a long time ago, Joe?
Yeah, I thought that would be kind of cool. Especially now that we're doing this show, maybe it would be interesting to get involved there, to get a little bit more involved with the advisory council. But you did it for a while, right, Sam?
Yeah, I did it for a year. When I met you, I think, what was it, 2006 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
I was on the advisory council, and it was pretty cool. I mean, it was interesting. You do a lot of conference calls with like, I don't know how many other members and kind of talk about the ACM program and contribute thoughts and ideas. And Apple actually does listen, which is pretty cool. And Mimi was involved in that back in the day as well. But if I would highly encourage someone to apply for something like that. If you really if you care about the ACN community and want to have more involvement, the ACN Advisory Council is the perfect opportunity to do that. I thought about redoing it again. Like, it's been years since I've done it before.
Yeah, I think it looks, it looks like a good way to give back a little bit and also maybe have some even small influence on the direction of the program.
And the other piece of it is just getting your name involved with Apple more. They know you now. It's like getting your name more involved with the company that you do so much business for and with.
Definitely.
And that can go a long way to some of the Apple employees knowing you and knowing who you are. And if anything changes within the program, they're like, oh no, this guy, Joe, he's been here for a while and we like him and all that stuff or whatever, just kind of, I don't know, keeping your name around.
Right. Absolutely. Goodwill goes a long way. And I think it's really important to keep that, it's just like you said, Sam, solidifies your relationship with the company.
So, Sam, do you have anything you would like to formally announce here on this show tonight? Can we put you on the spot? Are you campaigning here?
Am I?
Are you throwing your hat into the ring?
Right?
Now that we're talking about it more, I just might. I'm seriously considering it again. It was kind of cool, and I don't think I offered as much as I could have back then. And now I feel like, all right, I've been doing this for a long time. Maybe I have more to say, more to offer. And who knows, this podcast could be a good sounding board for all that stuff too,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. More perspective on the program. Yeah. I mean, if I were to campaign on it, I think I would campaign on the promise to make every effort to get those discount coupons applicable to refurbished products once again, just to reinstate that policy. That would be my platform.
Listen, there are only so many spots left. We can't run against each other, Joe. How about Jerry? You in, Jerry? Should we all campaign?
Let's do it.
Or we come in as one entity, the command control power entity.
Yeah, I think having one hot poker in the fire is enough. So, Joe, weren't you wrestling with some printers this past week?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a recurring theme for me. And I have I created a text expander snippet for this recently, which shows you the extent of how widespread this problem must be. It's and again, I'm saying this to get some feedback. I'm hoping I'm not the only one doing something horribly wrong in every printer install I've ever done. But printers seem to just go offline sometimes. You set up a printer, it's really straightforward, and it works, and it's no problem. And then like a couple weeks later, hey, we can't print, it says it's offline. And the solution in 95% of the cases, for me anyway, has been, power the printer down. I'll read you my text expander snippet. Press the power button on the printer to turn it off. Unplug the power cable from power. Wait 2 minutes, plug the printer back in and turn it back on. And that, you could probably just yank the power and plug it back in and you're good to go. But it seems like sometimes there's a little bit of voodoo with leave it unplugged for a couple minutes. Maybe there's a capacitor that has to drain or something like that. But that's been the solution. And I really would love to find a printer that doesn't need to do that. There are better ones, but I'm talking about sort of like just the mid-range, like home office printer. I like the HP OfficeJet Pro. The current one I think is something like the 8600 Plus. that's been a good printer for me, but it suffers from the same issue. And, is that something you guys have seen with this, similar model printers?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny that you were saying that, because I was like, hey, that's my model. But and as I kind of mentioned a little earlier, the funny thing about that is one of my reasons for choosing the 8600 was because it did exactly what you're talking of, just a little bit less than the other models, but it still did it. In the reviews, people would have to pull the power. Or one other thing was when I called HP a couple years ago, they said, okay, make sure that printer is not plugged into any surge protectors or battery backups. It must be plugged directly into the wall, which was just bizarre to me.
I've heard that from other vendors as well, not about printers, but MaxSale, OWC said that to me a while back about one of their raids. Don't plug it into a UPS. I'm like, are you crazy? What? They're like, no. I said, well, this is this has AVR, automatic voltage regulation. It's supposed to smooth out the sags and spikes and all that. And they said, no, you can't. We don't support any battery, any UPSs, any uninterruptible power supplies. I mean, I guess there are some that are online UPSs, which are supposed to provide, pure sine wave output and all that, and, better quality power and everything. But to not even use a surge strip, which in theory is just passing the voltage right from the wall, that seems weird. Doesn't it? Did it work? I mean, have you noticed any improvement in that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And Joe, this phenomena though, is it across clients, or is it this one client site? I mean, were the printers from like a bad batch? Because I've seen the occasional printer go offline, and it repeatedly does that, but I haven't established any kind of pattern. I mean, I don't normally see what you're describing.
No, I mean, it's been happening over the years with multiple manufacturers. It seems like more of an issue with HP. Just with the printers I've dealt with. And again, they're decent printers. I mean, I can't stand the ones that used to be free, like the free with purchase. Oh, I was like, just put it right in the dumpster. You just save yourself the trouble, because this thing is going to suck and it's going to cost you a ton in ink, but I'm talking about even just, the printers that cost, $200 to $300 even, which is a decent like home office printer these days, inkjet, and it's been happening over the last, I don't know, number of years. And that's kind of our standard advice. Maybe it's because of bad power. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp too negatively on HP either, but that's where I noticed it the most as well in my experience, is the kind of mid-range models, the little home or home office model printers is where I see it the most.
And we try and plug them into Ethernet. So, some of them are wireless. It doesn't really seem to matter though. We prefer Ethernet, but it doesn't seem to really help with this issue in particular. So
right.
But anyway, that's glad to sound off about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bizarre. And would you say that HP doesn't vary their model numbers all that much, from year to year? Would you say that these are from a certain vintage, or would you say they're fair, within 12 to 18 months of purchase?
Well, no, I mean, I can't really see any pattern with it. It just seems like it's been something that I've seen for the last few years, at least, maybe 3 to 4 years even. And, some printers have been deployed, some printers were there and configured before I came into the picture, and it's an issue. And I say, yeah, this is the solution. I've seen it before. Some of them are ones I've set up more recently. So there doesn't seem to be any kind of, any pattern to it at all that I can see.
Okay. Yeah. And just anecdotally, I've had really good success with the whole Epson. I had mentioned this to you off mic, Epson Workforce line. So these are the more recent ones that can do AirPrint, and they've just been, both the lasers and the inkjets have been rock solid and very, very reliable. And they can go to sleep and shut down, and they wake for network activity with no problem at all. We have one here, a big one, and it's asleep for most of the time, and it just never has trouble waking. It doesn't take a long time. So for whatever that's worth.
Maybe I'll switch back to Epson. I have an Epson Artisan model, Artisan 830 here in the office, and it's never given me a problem like that. So maybe Epson's just a good brand, just, if we have to play favorites.
Well, I always used to think, especially in, doing what we do, that Epsons were more like kind of like photo printers. I always kind of thought of them as not like a business kind of printer. But with this whole workforce line, it really sort of changed my thinking. And they're doing a lot that works really, really well. For a while there, I went through like a Brother phase, Brother, and I still think that the Brothers are generally pretty dependable. But I'm an Epson man.
Yeah, I generally like the Brother lasers. Those are pretty good. But
Yep.
yeah, Epson inkjet seems to be good. And you're right, I used to think of them as photo printers too. But I think the workforce model is more of like a, has bigger like tray capacities and stuff like that versus
Exactly.
the Artisan model.
Yeah.
So, but there was one more thing I had on my list. This was something that I dealt with on my machine, and I've seen it happen fairly often on my MacBook Air. I use it in clamshell mode when I'm in the office, and I have like a 23-inch cinema display plugged into it using a DVI to mini DisplayPort adapter and a USB cable plugged into to the monitor as well. And I'm not sure if any of that has anything to do with it, but it does seem like it happens a little bit more here in the office. And I wasn't sure if it was related to the bigger screen, the bigger display it's driving, and the graphics memory sort of dedicated to that. And maybe the processor is getting involved in sort of all of that. I'm not really sure in this model.
What's happening with it? And what, like,
yeah,
and what year would you say that MacBook Air is?
2012.
Okay.
So it's a really decent model. It's got 8 gigs of memory, 2 gigahertz Intel Core i7 processor, running 10.8 right now still. And the issue is that every so often, seems like it happens a couple times a week, kernel task starts using like over 100% of the CPU. And it's a dual core model, so if I've got some overhead to spare there. But so what's kernel task doing? And I'm thinking, I don't know, is it related to like virus barrier that's running? Is it really some other sort of low level task like that? Is it related to something, some syncing process in the background? I'm trying to troubleshoot it. I'm looking in the logs and nothing. I'm trying to sort of follow some threads and couldn't really figure out what was going on. It always seems to use about the same amount of memory, a little over a gig on my machine, kernel task. And then again, the CPU is supposed to be around, 10, 11%. And it jumps up to, 100, 110%. And the rest of the system just bogs down to a crawl. It's like using a PowerBook. I mean, you go back and you're like, you click mail and it takes a little while to like update and to come forward, and you're scrolling up and down and it's laggy. The scrolling is laggy and you're seeing the screen update more slowly, and it's just not getting your input, and it's just not able to keep up, and it feels like using a spinning disk as opposed to an SSD. And so long story short, I found that there were a couple websites referencing what the real issue is, and they suggested a fix, and the fix seemed a little crazy. The issue is that it just gets too hot. The machine is running too hot, and what it does to throttle, whatever processes are heating up the processor, is it basically it prioritizes the kernel task processes at a higher priority, so that things like I think it does things like updating the date and time and just like all kinds of innocuous things that don't take very much processor effort start consuming like almost the entire CPU. So basically it's just throttling the CPU, and this is kind of the effect of doing that. And the solution is cool the machine down. That's it. I mean, I had the machine situated in such a way that was blocking the vent a little bit. And I sort of repositioned it on my desk here, and it seems to have helped over the last couple of days. So I don't know. Has anybody else seen that?
I was going to say heat would. I mean, you already went there, but it seemed like that might be playing a role there. But you were right. So you said the fan was sort of blocked.
Yeah, right. The vent in the back.
The vent. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't as efficiently cooling, and I mean, heat is always an issue like that. And of course,
Right.
I thought, well, it would. If the processor gets throttled, of course the machine's going to slow down. But regardless, why would kernel task be using so much of the CPU? But it seems like basically it's symptomatic of the machine throttling the processor when you see the kernel task using so much CPU.
Yeah, I mean, I don't typically don't run in clamshell mode, but that's certainly an advertised feature from Apple, and there's companies like 12 South that make a whole line of stands for them, for these computers to function that way. So
yeah, it certainly was an easier solution than delving into console and looking at kernel extensions and stuff like that. It was just cool the thing down, and then it comes right back up to speed. So
have you been tempted to, can you recreate this with some regularity?
Well, it hasn't happened again since I sort of noticed that, and I made it a point to reposition it the last couple mornings since I found that those articles, so that it wouldn't. It's kind of hard to describe how I had the machine positioned, but basically the back vent wasn't as clear as it should be, and so the last couple of days it has been. So I haven't seen it since then. But if I guess I could actually try and heat the machine up a little bit and see if it were to happen again.
Yeah, I see.
Put it over a Bunsen burner.
Yeah,
exactly.
The other thing too is you could get one of those vertical stands to put it 90 degrees from being flat on the table.
Yeah, and actually, I've thought about that too. And it's good to have that suggestion ready. Like if a client says, "Hey, my whatever machine is really slow," that's a great sell for one of those kind of stands. But also, I'm looking forward to when I inevitably upgrade to Mavericks at some point, the better full screen support for multiple displays. So I may actually end up using it open on my desk with just with more than one display to take advantage of that. So I think that helps actually if you keep it open.
Mm-hmm. So was the difference in multiple display support the reason that you put it into clamshell mode, or was it just mostly a space issue?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's sort of where it's positioned on my desk. It wouldn't be as easy to take advantage of of that extra monitor. But I've thought about doing things like putting some kind of status board there, or Zendesk, or like something dedicated to that screen.
Gotcha.
In full screen mode, now, with Mavericks, it's a lot nicer to zoom something full screen. Whereas, or even like a YouTube video or something, I'm watching while I'm working. You can't, there was no really good way to like zoom something full screen prior to 10.9 and take advantage of both screens simultaneously. Like if you zoom something, to the built-in system full screen, it would blank out the other monitors. YouTube full screen would sort of just not really accept the input correctly, and it would, just do weird things like that. And you could sort of get pretty close to it by just like in the case of a video, just, zooming the browser to take up the full size of the display, and then, Command plus the monitor, Command plus the YouTube video. And, there are clunky workarounds, but I think with Mavericks, I'm looking forward to that feature.
Gotcha.
So anyway, but in the meantime, if it happens again, that's my first step is like, let me try to cool this thing off and see if that fixes it, just to confirm that.
Well, you'll have to report back then.
Yeah, I will. And it looks like Mike in the chat said he's seen MacBook Pros where kernel task would use a lot of CPU where the fans were not working. So that's seems to confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So then there was one last thing. I don't know if we have time for this. It's the same old story about passwords. And there was a discussion on Accidental Tech Podcast. I don't know if any of the listeners at home listen to ATP with Marco, John, and Casey, but it's a good show. And they were talking about, tech sort of pitfalls, things that our kids and their kids will look back on and say, you guys had to deal with that? That's so crazy. That's so weird. And some examples were like if you drop your phone on the pavement, it'll like break. Why should that be? This is something we carry every day. And, by the time our kids have these phones, it'll just be a solved problem. And they'll be like, are you serious? You had to like baby that thing, and be really careful with it. So they had some examples like that. One thing they didn't bring up was passwords. And I thought that is probably my number one thing that I think, our kids and their kids will just find crazy. Like, you guys had to remember these like uppercase, lowercase, symbol, number, and your solution was what? To use like your dog's name and the thing, So I think that will be solved. I don't know how yet, but I think until then we have tools like Monkeybox, for example, we've mentioned a few times on the show, which is a great option for managing these passwords. But I think someday the whole problem of passwords will go away. I hope.
Biometric feedback, right?
Yeah, right. You'll just be born with a chip. They'll say, "What? You didn't have a chip when you were that age?"
So what I struggle with all the time, and this is passwords is a great one. And the kids will tell their kids. My kids will tell their kids about this. Is like getting content on the TV. Most recently, we've been kind of going back and looking at some of these classic silent, and then when they first had talkie. So we've been watching a little bit of Laurel and Hardy, and the kids just absolutely adore Laurel and Hardy, and it's great stuff when you go back to it. But there's like these movies that they're not available for purchase through iTunes. They're not available through Amazon streaming, and it's being able to. So, but in many respects, we can find dozens, hundreds of thousands of movies that we never could get before, and they're all available to us. But one of the tough things is being able to find a movie, and then where is the source to get it? And if you do have a source, can you show it on your Apple TV, or can you show it on your Roku? And what are the hoops that you have to jump through to push this content to your entertainment device? And coupled with that, I've done a couple of hacks. We've got some Apple TVs here. And so I have the most recent Apple TV and the generation before it. And the generation before it, I'm not sure if it has a slower processor, but it seems to be a little bit crippled in what it can do. But that's the one that I've sort of did the hack with the software called FireCore, where you can basically take content from your NAS and push it to the Apple TV if you do this hack for I guess it's the black Apple TV hockey puck, but it's the first gen of that, and you can hack it.
Is that the one where you basically you're like subverting the movie trailers app to
that's one you could do with the new Apple TV, and that's using Plex, and so that I've done as well to the other one in the other part of the house, but. So anyway, the only reason why I bring this up is so that very first gen black one that we have that's been hacked, I frequently have to power cycle it. So the only way you can do that with the Apple TV is you'll have to yank, the plug out. So it's like a little tiny Airport Express, but in black. And it's like this really hard pressure fit, like pulling it out and plugging it back in. And then we have to wait for the thing to reboot. And that's like the bane of my existence, is being able to find just easy ways to get, content on these TVs and where to find it and pull it down. And I'm, this will be a thing of the past, and probably in, 5 to 10 years, but it's frustrating.
Yeah. You'll be able to just think it and it'll come up on your contact lens screen.
And of course, some of these new network attached storage devices, like we talked about with the Synology, is you could just use an app and you can call it up on your iPhone, and the iPhone just calls it up and boom, it just appears on the TV. So there, it's gotten huge quantum leaps forward just in the last several years, but we're not quite there yet. But
Yeah,
that's
a good point. And I think we have some cool things to look forward to in the next version of the Synology software as well, with where that's concerned. But yeah, any of those things rely on, it seems like the AirPlay hack, right? Like you said, you have to sort of bring it up on your iPhone, which has the ability to play it and then stream it to the TV. Is that the idea?
Right.
Yeah. So it's always like a workaround. And do people ask you guys like, hey, I've got all these DVDs, is there any way to just get them on the well, yeah, you can use this like really clunky, open source thing, and you have to download this, and it's questionably legal, and and then it works great. But then, it's just a lot of work. Like, how much is your time worth? Because you'd be probably better off just buying them as you want them in the iTunes store for the stuff that's available, as opposed to the stuff you mentioned that's like, you just can't find it anywhere.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we haven't had a DVD player in the house. Well, we've had the little external ones, but nothing that's going to the TV in a long time. So that we kind of threw out a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how about this Apple coming out with a knowledge base article this past week? Have you seen that? I mean, goodness, take a, slap me in the head. So for you that need to call this up, it's knowledge base article Tango Sierra.
No.
Or is it Sierra? Excuse me. Yeah, Tango Sierra 5367. And it basically has the heading OS 10, new email messages not received until mail is quit and reopened. And so, so the symptom is it won't get new mail, and the resolution is to basically they tell you to take accounts offline and then put them back online, or just quit email and relaunch it. I mean, we've been doing that for months and months and months now.
Yeah, and that's a new knowledge base article. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
dated February 3rd. So it was dated yesterday. Yeah. It's the last modified.
Yeah. I mean,
Awesome.
I hope that means they're working on it. It's like,
They finally recognized it's a problem.
Well, 10.9.1 was supposed to resolve it, but there's still some issues with Gmail. By the way, I've been having really good success. I mentioned this on the last show or the show before last, where I just basically completely deleted my Gmail accounts in my Apple Mail, quit Apple Mail, relaunched it, and then re-added them, and it's been doing a whole hell of a lot better. It's still not perfect, but it's much better than it was. But imagine showing this knowledge base article to a client who's complaining that it's not getting. It's like, well, here, read this.
right.
I got a question for you, Jerry. Sorry, Joe. Quick one for Gmail, for your Gmail account. Do you have folders in Gmail that are subfolders of your inbox? You know what I mean? Like
not in
inbox
Gmail, no, but I do on my Exchange account through Rackspace. But I do know exactly what you're talking about because that's what I do have in Rackspace. In Rackspace.
Oh, gotcha. Because I've seen an issue where any subfolders of the inbox will not synchronize with Apple Mail. As soon as I move them out of that subdirectory, then they synchronize with Apple Mail without a problem. I had this issue just last week with a client.
But only in Gmail.
Yeah, in Gmail.
Interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, you were saying something.
No. That is interesting though. It seems like Apple has a lot of trouble with these Gmail accounts lately. I don't know what I was going to say actually.
Sorry, man.
No, that's right.
Totally cut you off.
Well, I mean,
anyone have a client that was victimized by the Yahoo hack? Because I know that Joe, you had talked about Yahoo account being compromised.
It's too soon for me to talk about it. It's it's still such a time sink from a couple months ago. But none that I've heard of. Those were just Yahoo.com accounts. Is that right?
I believe so. That was my knowledge of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't heard of anybody. I mean that. Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny because you hear about that stuff happening like periodically to random clients throughout the year, and then I don't know, major breach like this, and I haven't heard from a peep out of anybody. So.
Kind of like this moment in the show.
As we start to wrap up, I just want to say I was doing the new client happy dance today because we scored a new client, and I was pretty psyched about it. So I was doing the loop around the house.
Now, is there a cutoff point? Like, is it like 10 or more and you do the happy dance? Or if is there a criteria for the happy dance?
No, I do the happy dance whenever I want. No. It was just actually it was a client that seemed to be kind of, they met with us, they liked us, and then we didn't hear anything for a while. Those kind of meetings, and I'm like, well, what could have possibly gone wrong? And we shot an email here and there, and they're like, yeah, we've just been really busy, and then we're going on vacation over the holidays and all this stuff, and so I kind of thought they were starting to blow me off, to be honest with you. And so I let it go, and then all of a sudden he reached out, and we had a big meeting, and then I did some work for them, which we resolved on an hourly basis. And they're like, boom, we want you guys. And that's that. So I think it was a little test to do like a little hourly work for a half day to see if we can resolve their issues for them. Mm-hmm. And once we sort of passed that test, then they called us a couple of days later and they said, we want to go with you guys full time.
Good deal.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
So anybody else got anything else for the live show here?
One more quick thing, actually. I wanted to give a shout out to Kevin Ginger, who you actually forwarded me an email on the list because I don't check it as often as I should. And I thought it was just kind of cool how it was just a kind of organically came up, how someone had an issue on the ACN discussion or the Google Groups list. And he was like, hey, I think I heard something on the Command Control Power podcast that this is how they got around the issue or dealt with the issue. And I always think, just personally, that stuff is kind of cool, how you can just kind of – it shows that we have some cool listeners that are taking this stuff to heart, and we also pick stuff up from them as well. And so that kind of stuff really kind of puts a smile on my face, I got to say.
Absolutely. There's been a couple of references to our show on the ACN alumni list recently. And just like you said, Sam, kind of, just mentions, just random mentions. And for all you guys mentioning us, we are watching and we do appreciate it. We've been hearing some rumblings. We've got a pretty decent sized audience as far as we can measure it. And so, we thank you core listeners for being in the chat week after week and, of course, subscribing. And we encourage you and, you to subscribe and to tell your friends, because that's really the best way you can sort of, vote for us, so to speak, is by signing on to receive our shows every week. Just subscribe in iTunes. And, we look forward to providing more interesting content week after week and bringing you more interviews and, being here for you guys and giving a little bit back to the ACN community. So thanks for everyone for listening.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all. And thank you, Kevin, for the unsolicited
and
positive.
We're all choked up here. We can't even, we have so much gratitude. We're all choked up. We can't even express how we feel.
It's funny. Mike Kingsley was saying, for all of us that mentioned, do we get in on the initial stock offerings? We'd love to get there, man.
Exactly.
Maybe with our hive mind, we'll be able to come up with the fix for Apple Mail, and then we could all retire.
That would be great. That'd be great. Well, thanks everyone again for listening, and I think we'll leave you there, and we'll be back next week with more great command control power. Check us out at commandcontrolpower.com every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week.
Of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a century combined of Apple expertise right now. Right now. My Mac is slow. Have you tried?